Hey guys, Jason here. Welcome back to another video here on the channel. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about three things that is sort of different between modern music and old school music. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, first thing I'm going to be talking about is the way that songs end. Second thing I'm going to be talking about is key changes. And third thing I'm going to be talking about is the digitization of modern music versus the old ways that we would record, that old school music would be recorded. So, let's talk about how this video even came to fruition anyways, or the whole idea of this video. So I was listening to like some old music, and I'm like, oh yeah, well these songs, they end by fading out, or some of them they end by slowing down the tempo, or of course there's some of them that just abruptly end, but it's not as common as it is now. I guess let's talk about key changes, and this was the whole reason I decided to make the video, is that the key changes, I was listening to a song, I think it was called Surrender by Cheap Trick, and the key changes, it was a key change that happened like the very beginning of the song before the first verse, and then there was a key change that happened right before the final verse. And I'm like, you know what, I should make this video to explain why this happens. And then I got to thinking, well, what about modern music versus old school music, and like the way that it's recorded? Because there's a lot of people that bring up that topic of, oh well, I don't like the way that modern music is recorded, I like the way that old school music is recorded, and I'll get to that. First, I'm going to talk about song endings. So, fading out, I guess I'll talk about first. I always joke around and say that the song fades out because the band or artist wants to jam, and the producer or whoever's recording it is like, well, you know, eventually we got to cut this off. So they just fade it out, and the band can still jam for like 10 more minutes. Maybe that is how some songs end. I don't know. But all joking aside, in all seriousness, I feel like fading out is supposed to represent some sort of message in the song. Like, we've sent our message. We want to send our message to as many people as we can. But eventually, we have to stop sending our message because we run out of time. So, let's fade our song out. Because, you know, I feel like fading out in that sense, like, represents we've sent our message. We still want to send our message, but it's going to, as the song fades out, it's going to come to less and less people at a time because we are eventually running out of time. We can't be sending our message forever, I guess, if you understand what that means. Whereas when a song ends, when like a tempo slows down or something like that, it makes the song feel like it's like there's some sort of resolution to the message. And even when a song like doesn't end like that and ends kind of differently, without fading out or without slowing down, it kind of just ends on one note. It's kind of like, you know, the resolution, there is a resolution to the message. But I feel like the slowing down, that just signifies it. Yes, we've resolved whatever we need to resolve. We've sent our message of whatever we need to send through the song. So, that's what fading out or ending songs, slowing down, or, yeah. And, alright, well, next I'm going to talk about key changes, and I guess I can incorporate tempo changes because it's going to come up in the next part where I talk about the differences of how modern music is recorded versus how old school music is recorded. So next I'm going to talk about key changes. What I think key changes represent, especially in like more like ballads or older mainstream pop songs, I feel like it always represents the climax of the song. Sometimes it represents the climax of the song. Other times it just represents, a lot of times the key change or the tempo changes, but we're going to focus on key changes for now, represent emotion, like changes of emotion, I guess, in the song. Like the different key just represents, well, we are either reaching the climax or we're changing the emotion up a little bit, for the song. And then, of course, there's different types of key changes, the half-step key changes, like, for example, in that song by Cheap Trick, step key changes, which, songs, or in some songs, it's very rare, I will say, it's very rare in certain genres, especially like, in metal, the way, you don't really see key changes all that much, and if you do, especially like even in like an old school metal, you don't really see key changes, because the key just kind of naturally changes with the song, so unless you're really unless you're really paying attention, you're probably not going to notice it. Sometimes like it'll happen in the guitar solo. Not really a lot in modern metal songs anymore. There are, of course, some exceptions, but in old metal songs, you don't really see the key changes, if you're just a casual listener. Anyway, of course, in electronic music, you sometimes see it, sometimes don't. Depends on whatever genre you're listening to. In more underground genres like techno, you're not going to see it a lot. But anyway, back on topic. So key changes, and then sometimes, there's tempo changes or time signature changes. You see those a lot more in prog, metal, and genres like that. But yeah, those are what the key changes in the way that songs end kind of represent, in my opinion. So now I'm going to get to the reasons why we don't use, or why they aren't being used as much in the modern music era, in my opinion. I feel like the reason that fading out or slowed down song endings, the reason why they're not being used as much, slowed down song endings, I think it's because people are quantizing their music. People are like quantizing their music and stuff, and adding all these digital effects and everything else, that there's really no need for it. And that kind of extends the key changes. Like, now people can just add, I feel like people, in the modern era, kind of just add effects to their songs and do certain things with their songs to where they feel like they don't really need a key change. So yeah. In my songs, I don't really fade out that much, just because I do create like more modern music a lot of times, so I don't really feel the need to fade out that much or key change that much, or of course there are like a couple exceptions that I have done like key changes, like for example The Matrix. That song of mine wasn't like, I didn't do a full-on key change, but it was like a temporary key change that I did through the drop. And then, of course, if you listen to Inca Dance, the cover, the Cusco song that I did, I don't know if you pronounce it like Costco or Cusco, but the cover of that song, there's a key change, so I did the key change too. But anyway, so that's why I think they just are not used in modern music, just because the sound over time, over like, let's say the last 30 years has changed. And all this, we kind of stopped using key changes and stopped fading out as much. Kind of started in like the 2000s, I feel like. Of course, like in like a lot of genres, there's still some exceptions. Um, like in metal, like what is it in metal? Like we never really use fading out that much unless you listen to a more mainstream genre. But if you were into like the more underground stuff, you never saw fading out. You always saw like either abrupt ends to songs or fading out wouldn't be the whole song, but it would be like some sort of like soundscape. And I feel like that's kind of how it is in like modern music too. If you are gonna fade out or fade in a song, you're not gonna do the whole song anymore because you're not really recording like on analog. You can express more emotion by fading out the song or not fading out like the whole song, but using like a part of the song or using a soundscape or using some sort of thing. And that's what I do like about modern music. When it comes to that. So continuing that conversation, we're going to get on to the differences of the ways that modern music is recorded from the ways that old school music is recorded. And first, we're going to talk about quantization and tempo maps and tempo changes. Not big tempo changes, but I mean like smaller, more unnoticeable tempo changes that probably the average listener wouldn't notice. When I mean, if I talk about big tempo changes, like a lot of times that happens in subgenres of metal, like deathcore, metalcore, death metal. They still can figure out how to do that even if they add quantization. Because I've experimented with it sometimes too. That's not what I'm here to talk about. Small tempo maps or tempo changes, where the song kind of shifts its energy from one part to the other because the tempo is, changing. So all the like hardcore like metal fans that are really into like mixing metal and like metal music production, some of them always say, well, the whole reason why modern music sucks is because we don't have variations and tempo changes and they add too much auto-tune and they make the music, they add too many digital effects to their songs and it doesn't sound metal enough. Well, I can kind of agree on that, but not. Okay, so a lot of times what they fail to understand is that music over time has evolved. And I can like make a separate video on like why it's evolved the way that it's evolved, but I'm not going to address that in this video. But what they fail to understand is that over time music has evolved and it will evolve. It's not going to stay like the 1970s or 1980s or even the 1990s forever. So, like, that's just what they fail to understand. So, they want to argue like, oh well, we don't like quantization, we don't like auto-tune, and we don't want all this stuff. Which, yeah, in like here's the thing, is in some subgenres of metal and rock, for example, probably like death metal, or black metal, or thrash metal, or even like maybe like grunge, for example, even though grunge is not really around anymore, but like black metal, death metal, and some like thrash metal, and like maybe like not old school heavy metal, but like heavy metal, maybe like in genres that sound more darker. You want probably those variations of tempo changes because it probably just matches the energy of the song. So you don't want the song to be dynamically tight or like that dynamically tight. You want it loosened up. So maybe you do want like all those variations and kind of going from like 10 BPM, slowing down in one part of the song and kind of going up back up. Like if you listen to Chimera's Impossibility of Reason, you'll notice kind of slight tempo changes on that album. But yeah. But even though that like came out in like 2003, so that's like almost 25 years ago now, but still, that was at the peak of when quantization and all this auto-tune stuff started. So, they gotta realize, or people gotta realize, that we don't record off of analog anymore, and we've changed the way that our music is recorded. Like half of the time with our drummer, like we don't even like have a drummer play like on the actual recording, because the guitarist will just play to a set of programmed drums, and people will just use those drum samples on an album. So I feel like that's what people fail to understand. And then when it comes to like other subgenres of metal and other subgenres, and even like subgenres of like electronic music, and even getting to the scope of stuff outside of metal and rock, you want that tightness, because if you don't have that tightness, then the song doesn't sound good. For example, like in gent, or in progressive metal, or in metalcore, the song sounds better if you want that, or if you actually have a little bit of tightness and you quantize the notes up and you do all that stuff, because that's just how these more modern genres are supposed to kind of sound. So I'm not saying, oh, well, like the drums, for example, need to sound at one velocity, one sort of velocity or one sort of dynamic for the whole entire song. No. No, they should sound like at a different dynamic for like different parts of the song to disguise different parts. So great example that I could say, I guess, is, well, the new Rivers of Nile album I talked about in the last video I made. It's tight. You can see that it's quantized and all. But the drums have, like, different dynamics. They have, like, different sorts of things. And they sound good. Metalcore, of course, like Spirit Box, if you have, like, those, like, sort of, like, songs and stuff, like, that's just the way you kind of want them to sound. So, you gotta realize that for, like, those sorts of subgenres, you want that sort of sound. And then, for outside of metal, I'm just gonna give the electronic as an example, because that's the most obvious one, I guess. It wouldn't be electronic if you made it not electronic, if you see what I'm saying. But they won't ever look that deep into that, because those people don't ever listen to electronic music. They only listen to rock music. They don't listen to anything else. Besides probably like old school rock, or like they probably tapped into like pop music. But in the other like electronic genres, or the other trap, or like rap, or house, or any of that stuff, they haven't checked that out to analyze how that's supposed to sound and why the quantization is supposed to sound like that. And why the drums are supposed to sound that specific way in that specific subgenre of music. So that's what they gotta realize about, like, the way that songs were, like, structured and recorded and written, like, from back then to modern times, is that music from back then it had to evolve. Like, say for example, the 50s to the 80s, music from the 50s had to slowly evolve into what music in the 80s would sound like. And that's how it is now. Music now keeps evolving into newer sounds, into newer areas, into newer things that people are discovering, that people are checking out. And that's why music is the way that it is. And that's why it's so digitized, because we made it digitized, because that's the way we've evolved, and that's why we don't record off a tape. And that's why we haven't recorded off a tape for like the last 20 to 25 years. Now I can talk about techno and how we pretty much digitized that, but we were still recording stuff off a tape. But I'm gonna leave that for another video, because this video is already getting long enough. And yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much my tangent about quantization, modern music, and then auto-tune. I forgot about auto-tune. All the people that listen to metal, of course, will say, "Oh, well, we can't add auto-tune to our songs." Well, that's because a lot of times, not all the time, but some of the time, you can't add auto-tune to a metal song because it's screaming. It's not regular singing, so you can't add auto-tune to it. Now, I will say, like, these pop artists now, or these rappers, now, like, metal screaming just does not sound right with auto-tune. So that's why you don't add auto-tune to it. But, like, these rappers, these pop artists, like these new pop artists, the new rappers, now, here's what I will say is bad about auto-tune. They are overusing auto-tune. Like, half of these new rappers have so much auto-tune, they try to act like they can rap, but in reality, they can't rap. The rap doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound like rap because it has auto-tune. Because auto-tune is trying to correct their rapping. They are not singing. They are singing to they are rapping to auto-tune. And auto-tune can't correct that because it's rapping. And that's why it doesn't sound good. Now, in a song, like even in rock songs, even hard rock songs, and electronic songs, and like all sorts of songs, they all have auto-tune now. But if the mixer or whoever is producing the music adds just the right amount of auto-tune, and they don't add too much auto-tune, then it'll actually sound really good. I've heard, like, some of the best metal tracks and some of the best hard rock tracks I've heard, like with clean singing, because all clean singing metal tracks, they fail to sometimes admit this, but they have auto-tune too. Every track has auto-tune. Well, every modern track from probably 1995 has auto-tune. Or at least a little bit. And some of the songs, like those metal songs, like Trivium's albums, Five Finger Death Punch's albums, like all the clean vocals on that, and even like metalcore stuff, like bands like Straight Shot Home, and Cane Hill and Spiritbox, auto-tune, or what is it? Auto-tune is there for a reason, but it's not overbearing. It's not too much auto-tune. It adds the right amount of flavor to the song to make the song sound good. Now imagine with all this modern music, we added auto-tune, or we didn't add auto-tune rather. How would the song sound now? Yes, I get it. Some people abuse auto-tune, like, for example, some of the pop artists, some of the rappers, They abuse auto-tune because they're just not that good, and they can't rap without auto-tune. But auto-tune, if it's used correctly, can make a song sound really good, actually. And that's what these people think, or that's what some people, like, who are very anti-auto-tune think. They think, oh, well, auto-tune is used just because they're not a good singer. That's the case if you abuse auto-tune, quote-unquote abuse. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to emphasize it, abuse auto-tune. But if you're not abusing auto-tune, and you're just using it to your advantage to make the song probably sound better, or probably sound as good as it ever will, then that's when you should use it. Same with what I just talked about with quantization and the way that the drums and the guitars and all the instruments sound. If you abuse it, then it's not good. If you use it to your advantage to make the song sound as tight as you can without making the song sound bad and making it probably still have like a human feel to it, then it sounds good. Because in all my songs, I use quantization. I do use auto-tune sometimes, like. But the thing is, like in the one song that will be coming out for Track of the Week, that actually does have a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of auto-tune. But you're never going to notice it. You're never going to notice it. And that's the thing. You want to use auto-tune to where it's a tiny amount or just a good amount to where the casual listener, maybe they'll think it's auto-tune, but they won't know that it's auto-tune. That's the way to record modern music, is to use the tools like quantization, like drum loops, or like dynamic editing or whatever, and auto-tune and all these other features. Use them to your advantage. Don't overuse them. Don't abuse them. And you'll be good and you'll have a good song in whatever genre that you're trying to record. And also adjust to the genre. Whatever genre that you are trying to record, adjust to whatever fits best for the song. And if you just do that, then the song will sound really good. And same with the way the song ends. Just whatever you feel like that the way that the song is supposed to end, just do that and it will sound good. But if you overuse it, it won't. So that's my whole rant, or my whole tangent, I guess, about, well, modern music and the way that it's recorded, and auto-tune, and quantization, and drum patterns, and guitars, and synths, and any other instrument, I guess, that you will be recording for a song. Key changes, tempo changes, and the way that songs end. So, I think it's time to wrap up this video. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. Well, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.